Yeah, welcome to the Big Toilet Project. This is the initial findings webinar, the 9th of June 2025. And we will, hold on. Yeah. So the agenda for the meeting today is we want to tell you a little bit about us, who we are. Many of you know us, but we want to kind of just give people a brief overview of what we do here at UCL in the Plastic Waste Innovation Hub and what we're doing more generally about nappy and absorbent hygiene products. Then we're going to tell you about the initial findings for the Big Toilet Project, and that that presentation is going to take us about 25 minutes or 25 minutes. Then we're going to invite you into an interactive session where we're going to kind of use this thing called Mentimeter to ask you a few questions about policy options that we think are starting to kind of emerge and what people think about it. But mostly we just want to get your feedback on anything you see. And so there's a question and answer for 15 minutes. And if you've got questions as we go along, please just post them in the Q&A chat, and then we'll go to them at the end. So who are we? Well, we are a multidisciplinary team. So we started the UCL Plastic Waste Innovation Hub in 2019 when we really realized that you can't really address many of these kind of complex plastic waste issues unless you have a multidisciplinary team. So, we have life cycle assessment experts, we have enzyme chemistry experts, we have biochemists, we have behavior change experts, we've got policy design experts, public engagement experts, material scientists, designers, chemists, and our aim is to kind of be able to kind of in the round look at all these different plastic waste issues and try and kind of provide solutions that really can work, that really will reduce the plastic waste, but not impact people's essential living standards, and allow people to live a kind of dignified and enjoyable life. We've also been doing citizen science projects, and this is one of them that we're going to talk about today. And so you are part of the team. If you're on this webinar, you are part of this research project, and we really believe that citizen science is a really powerful tool to kind of involve people, because the thing about plastics is that they are part of our lives. They're a really important material to us all. They allow us to do so much, and so people are a big part of the system. And so we need people's insights in order to find solutions. And citizen science is an interesting way to do it. What's the context of this particular project? Well, nappies and diapers are essential items, right? We need them. This is not a luxury item. But nevertheless, we've been very poor at kind of understanding how to dispose of them in a sustainable way. So we now have 300,000 disposable nappies or diapers being sent to landfill or incinerated or ending up in the environment every minute. So that's sort of 33 billion single-use nappies or diapers every year, resulting in about 6.7 million tons of waste. And one of the things we identified by doing the research that we ended up doing when we looked at this problem was that the average toilet training age of children in high-income countries has increased from 28 months in the 1950s to now around 37 months in the 2000s. And that means that each individual baby is using more nappies before they get toilet trained than they used to. And that's one of the kind of research focuses for the Big Toilet Project, which is like if we try and understand why toilet training age has gone up, we can maybe make a big impact into the mountain of waste. And it's notable that in 2024, 1 in 4 children aged 48 months started school in the UK wearing nappies. And that is obviously then impacting school teachers and schools. It impacts the child themselves. There's all sorts of issues that are not ideal for a kid going into a school like that in nappies. The parents suffer as well. And of course the environment. So this is the context of why we're approaching this project. I sort of talk about a systems approach, and that's because it's impossible really to kind of do something about plastic waste issues unless you really look at them in the round and look at the whole system of their production, from everything from raw materials to their use, to their disposal, and then to their end of life. And at the top of this diagram, you can see essentially what it basically happens now. A really impressive and efficient and incredibly impressive manufacturing system has kind of delivered products that are really excellent and reduce nappy rash, they reduce wetness, they fit very well, they don't leak, they are incredibly kind of good value for money. And so that kind of raw materials to manufacturing to use phase is been really highly optimized. The disposal phase has had less attention, and so mostly they just end up in the residual waste or in the environment, if you look at it, a global issue. And in countries where there is waste infrastructure, that tends to go to landfill incineration. That's certainly the truth in the UK. And in other countries where there's no waste infrastructure, they go into the environment. And this is really obviously a very bad outcome. So we're looking at how would we make a sustainable system that doesn't result in that. And we're looking at these loops that you can see on the diagram. So there's the loop that is about reuse, and how you could use reusable nappies, and we've been doing some research in that area, which we can tell you about at a later stage. And we've also got some research into the recycling and composting options. And I'm just going to summarize today what we have found about the issues and opportunities in those spaces. So I mentioned, so this is like it looks like a very complicated overview, but I'm going to talk it through with you. So the reduce option on the left-hand side. So these are the kind of on the left-hand side I've listed in the column the options to make the system of provision and waste management more sustainable. So we can reduce, we can reuse, we can recycle, and we can compost. We need to do one or all of those. On the top, you can see these different ways of looking at those systems and how we assess them. So life cycle assessment is looking at all the energy and emissions, all the pollution caused at every stage: manufacturing, use, and disposal. Materials and design is looking at them like, how can we optimize them, maybe design them for recycling or design them for composting or design them for reuse. And we've done work in all those, and the researchers, which I highlighted at the beginning, kind of are all expert in those areas. We've got chemical and biochemical analysis. So how can we, if we are going to recycle them, what issues do we face? And if we're going to compost them, what issues do we face? And similarly, reduce and reuse. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the behavior of people and how we use them and how we use resources in general is a vital part of the system. So we've got behavior change science analysis, and we are not isolated in our houses. Government policy affects us. It affects how much we pay, how much tax we pay. It affects the support we get locally and in terms of healthcare. So we've been looking at the policy issues and, of course, the economics, which drives people's, is an important part of the system. And then we've kind of summarized the kind of system change that would have to happen, as we see it, in order to make these different solutions more effective and therefore replacing the disposal and the incineration option. So if I go along the top, reduce, which we're going to talk mostly about in this webinar, and what we found, there's all sorts of sorry, I should tell you the color coding for these is that green is things are looking good for this option in that column. Looking at from a life cycle assessment, for instance, reduce is a very good option. It reduces the resource needs, it reduces pollution. It's win-win-win on that front. So if you go across the row, you can see that there's either green or yellow, which means there's some issues that we're trying to understand better, and that if we could unlock, they would really make reduce a very viable policy option. So we've got some yellows here, which we're going to talk about in this webinar. We've got the behaviors, we've got the policy, and we've got the systems research and systems change. And that's what we're going to focus on in this webinar, looking at those sort of yellows and what we're doing in the Big Toilet Project. just wanted to kind of update you on the other stuff so that we don't feel that we're ignoring other options. We've been looking a lot on reusable nappies, and from a life cycle assessment perspective, they look good. From a materials and design, they've actually had a lot of innovation, and that they look good. In terms of chemical and biochemical innovation, the materials used, there is work to do, but it's good. There are huge barriers to adoption because of people's various issues, which we can talk about in another webinar that we've identified. The policies affecting this, there's all sorts of initiatives around encouraging this, but they're not often joined up, so that's not a perfectly usable system for most people in the UK. But there are economic opportunities for reusable nappy businesses. There's a lot of people doing this, a lot of companies doing this. And we're really trying to understand the systems change that would need to help unlock that economic and sustainable opportunity. From the recycling perspective, the life cycle assessment at the moment looks good. So recycling nappies. There's all sorts of technical problems to solve in design because many of the materials that go into a disposable nappy, the plastics in particular, it's a very complex product, and separating them all out presents real problems. If you use a chemical, biochemical methods to deal with the nappies and the recycling, you can see a big red square there. We've identified that the superabsorbent polymer, the polymer that puffs up and really makes them very absorb all the liquid and hold it in a gel, they are not currently recyclable at the moment, and that's a big issue when you think about the billions that we need to kind of deal with. Also, the pharmaceuticals and nutrients that end up in the nappy, it's very hard actually to kind of separate them and to make them safe so that we are not going to be polluting the water. So that is one of the big technical hurdles that we've identified. It also kind of, if you look at the bigger picture of absorbent hygiene products in general, so adding in, if we have a system for nappies recycling, they should also be compatible with adult incontinence products and period products. Then the pharmaceuticals issue becomes a much bigger one. So we really think that needs to be, that's a big focus of our attention. Separate collections for nappies are really important, but they're being done. They're being done in many different places in the world, including Wales in the UK. How to incentivize recycling so that recycling becomes a good option. There are all sorts of ways in which carbon taxes and EPR could be used there, and they are being explored in other countries. Recycled materials, in order for this to really work, the recycling, the economics has to stack up. So those recycled materials need to have an end market. At the moment, there are a few recycling plants in the world we visited, and they are selling the plastics that they recover to things like road builders and automotive. But it's a kind of, there's a question mark there as to how big those end markets really are, and whether they can be really competitive to virgin plastics as we go forward, if this was to be scaled up into the billions of nappies per year that would need to be. So that's where we are with the recycling. And with the composting of nappies, the life cycle assessment looks mostly good, but it only stacks up if the compost, when you compost the nappies, you then have to sell that compost, nutrient-rich compost, to farmers to displace fertilizer, and it has to go on their land. But there are all sorts of issues that we'll see with the policy later. There isn't currently, from a materials and design perspective, a fully compostable nappy. There's always little bits of the nappy at the moment that don't fully compost, and so that's a design problem that needs to be addressed. Similarly, from the chemical biochemical perspective, separate collections would work, but there's a kind of slight worry that you can't have them coexisting with the fossil-based disposable nappies, because they shouldn't be collected together, and there might be confusion to people, and there's a slight worry that how would you do that if the compostable nappies are a small part of the market? There might be big contamination issues. In the UK, we've talked to the government about this at length and presented our evidence so far, and they show very little interest in the compostable nappies and changing legislation to make them essentially more resolving some of these issues, and in particular, resolving the issue of it being legal to sell that compost to farmers and put on the land, which it currently is not. So that's why there's some two big red bars there in the UK. There are other countries that do allow this, and so those are options available in those countries, but the other things would still have to be addressed. So I hope that wasn't too much of a head expanded for you, but we just wanted to make sure that you realize that we are this webinar and this piece of work, the Big Toilet Project, is really concentrating on reduce, but that's not the only piece of work we're doing in this space, and we don't believe that there's one solution that will solve the whole nappy issue. Okay, so let's go on to the Big Toilet Project, which is really exciting, and we've really been so heartened by the kind of everyone's really helping us publicize this and getting involved, and many of you on the call are our citizens taking part, and thank you so much for that. So there's two parts of it that we've been collecting data from citizens who their attitudes and understanding of toilet training, and I'm going to present the initial results to you now. And then also there's the people who are actually toilet training now have been submitting their toilet training diaries. And the really important part of this is that we need live data. We need to know when people are starting toilet training, what method they're using, how they're getting on with it, how long it's going to take. And our ambition is to have really good data from all around the world, from different types of families and situations and carers, so that we can really start to correlate what works, like which methods work will come out really clearly. Maybe it'll be really clear that some people in some situations are having a much harder time than others. How can we help them? And that's our ambition. Well, our total ambition is to reduce is to create policy interventions that could reduce the toilet training age and get this plastic waste issue down while still retaining all the value of the nappy system to the parents and babies and carers. So where are we? We're 12 weeks in. We've been trying to publicize it as much as we can. So we've had quite a good media uptake. We're in 74 countries. People have been emailing us. Thank you so much. It's been really that's a really rich set of data, which we'll also be using. We've got 833 toilet training diary entries, and 2,848 people have completed the survey. I must say, although this map is really heartening, we really aren't getting a lot of data from the lower income countries, the developing countries. Most of our data is coming from, 97% of it, in fact, is coming from high income countries like America, UK, Europe, Canada, and so on. And so this is one thing we really need your help with. What are we seeing? Well, okay, when we ask people how they balance work with toilet training, we find that a lot, getting up to 70% of people are in employment whose job who identify themselves as the person who most in charge of the toilet training. So they're balancing work and toilet training at this very crucial issue time. And then we dived into that data to say, well, like, who else in that household is also working? And that's a very high percentage too. And when we aggregated that and correlated that data, we found that about 50% of households are two working parents at this crucial time. So they're both working if they're a two-parent or two-carer family, and they're also trying to balance that with toilet training, which I think is an interesting result, and it is probably part of the puzzle here. Who else does your child routinely spend time with? And in the UK, that's 73%. Overall in our data, that's 70% is with nursery staff. So people are balancing work. This is a picture that seems to be building up for us. People are balancing work and those commitments. Their kids are in nurseries or have nursery staff or carers. So there's also the 13% there with carer childminders. So it's a large percentage of people are in that situation. So different adults interacting with your child. And are they all kind of saying the same thing? Are they all kind of got the same goals? Have they all got the same ability to help with the toilet training? Question mark. When we ask them, what type of childcare related activities do they help with? Toilet training does come up by 54.5%, but that sort of means that only that maybe 50% it isn't on the cards for. And so that's quite a lot of babies and children out there who maybe are only relying on their parents, who are then in a quite a difficult situation, working and balancing lots of other responsibilities. Understanding and awareness. So when we ask people, do you understand what the recommended age is for starting completing toilet training? And we were kind of you know just asking this is their motivations and their understanding. um it's over 70% people state that they really do understand, that they know when they need to do it and they're really on it, and they feel confident that they can respond to their child's readiness signs, or they're focused on this. So those stats look like people are feeling very, yeah, mostly very confident about what they need to do and how to do it. But then, which of these statements best describes your approach to carrying out toilet training? There's less. Well, it's a mixed picture. So some people aim to carry out toilet training as and when on different days with no fixed routine. Some 18% have no particular approach to toilet training, and then there's 62% who want to do it over a dedicated time period over several days or weeks. And then when we ask people, is the norm in my network is to have is to toilet train by 30 months, which is the date that we're kind of the recommended date in the UK to have completed toilet training. There was not a lot of consensus about this. In fact, 54% said they were unsure or disagreed with that. So there's lots to unpick there, and we haven't really done much analysis of this data, and we're just giving it to you fresh, and we will do more, but we also want to kind of start the conversation with you. And then when we ask what's the age of when toilet training started of your child, this is the kind of spectrum of answers that we got. So we've got 13% doing it at less than 12 months, another 11% who are doing it between 12 and 18 months. 24% doing it between 19 and 24 months, 28%, so the median is 25 to 30 months, and then people doing it after that, it's coming to about 20% of people doing it after 30 months, beginning after 30 months. Again, this is early days in this data, but it's certainly kind of so to just note that that's 400 toilet training diaries. The data from 400 of those. So it's not enormous stats, but still it's very interesting to have a look at that. And then we ask people what kind of nappies you're using before and during toilet training, and there's a large range, but the majority are using disposable nappies, which are not compostable or biodegradable. But there's certainly, I think what this shows you is that people taking part in this survey and this citizen science project are using reusables. So some are using reusables, some are using pull-up pants, some are using disposables. So I think it's good to get that we show that we've got different types of nappy use, because one of the hypotheses out there that we want to kind of comment on is that that disposable nappies, are so good that the babies sometimes don't know they're wet, and maybe that implicated in why toilet training is delayed. And this comes up a lot in conversation with people, and so it's important that we've got data from both the reusables, the compostables, and the disposables. And what toilet training strategies they're using, there seems to be a lot of different kind of answers to this, but the kind of there's certainly kind of a lot of people using familiarizing the child with toilet training equipment and using a potty, and kind of not just using any old way. I think it would be good to kind of understand better again whether there are whether some of these strategies then correlate with lower toilet training age or not. But again, we'll need more stats, so we need more people to take part, and from more, and who represent the different methods on this diagram, and maybe other methods too. So that's quite a quick survey of the data so far on the Big Toilet project. And what have we kind of highlighted out of all that? It's quite a lot to take on board. I agree. And we are recording this. So we will be posting this on the website, and you can go back and have a look at it, and you can also forward it to other people who weren't able to make this time. So this conversation can go on, and you don't need to kind of react right now to the lot of numerical data we're presenting you. But just to kind of highlight a few things, work status to us seems like an important thing. So the majority of parents and carers are in work at the time potty training is recommended, and 50% of them are two-parent carer families, and they're both working. The importance of nursery seems to have come up as well, which is that the majority of children are spending routine time with nursery staff or childminders at the time that toilet training is recommended. So they must be instrumental people and organisations in the toilet training. What are we doing? What's happening there is an interesting question. Awareness. So people seem to be very aware, like they need to toilet train. It's not like they're completely ignorant of it. People are really on it. So 77% or 77.8% know that they need to toilet train before 30 months. But as we know, that's not being achieved. So it's not that the intention doesn't seem to be there. It's that there are so many barriers, perhaps, to getting there. And that maybe a barrier is the time commitment. So majority of parents and carers prefer to carry out toilet training over a dedicated period of time, and maybe that window of opportunities are quite a rare one, and they have to wait for the summer holidays or these maybe rare opportunities to do it. And when they miss one, or for whatever reason, for other things happen, then it delays it by 3 months, 4 months, who knows. So we'd like to dive more into that data. And then timing. So a significant number of parents and carers are starting toilet training after 30 months, 23%. So they are definitely going to toilet train after that recommended date. So I hope that's a good kind of presentation of the data so far. And what we want to now do, having kind of given you a big overview of all our work, and now the preliminary results after 12 weeks of the Big Toilet project, is go to an interactive session with you where we're going to just get your opinions about certain policy options that we kind of want to start exploring now. If you haven't ever done a Mentimeter kind of interactive session, if you could go to and you want to do it, we'd love you to do it with us for 5 or 10 minutes. We'd like you to go to www.menti.com and use this code, and it'll take you into our session where we'll see live data from everyone involved in this webinar, and we'll ask certain questions. You'll see what everyone's responses are live. The other thing you can do is just take a photo, just use your camera on your smartphone if you have one, and it will onto this 2D barcode, and it will take you straight there. And I need to stop sharing at that point in order to go there myself.
.com, you can see the code right at the top, 74911161. And you should be able to see the map. And what we're asking here is just to put a dot as to where you're from, so we can to make sure that we can have a sense of the follow-up questions. Okay, and if you've done that first question, we can go to the second question, which is about flexible working policies to support toilet training. So really kind of talking around the points that Mark raised, that we have a lot of working parents who are time poor and want to do toilet training over a dedicated period of time, but work might be getting in the way. Would flexible working policies help with that, do you think? I'll wait for another couple of minutes. Good. And just to be clear on the number 5, so we can have flexible working policies within kind of current allowances. So maybe it's kind of you can say instead of taking a few extra days off on say maternity or paternity leave, you can then proportion those for toilet training later down, or you just get flexible working policy in terms of in addition to what you currently have. So that will be kind of a new policy where you would add time off to your current allowance. Okay, and then next question is about nurseries. So acknowledging the role of nursery staff and the fact that we are getting this inconsistency within the data currently, where 50% are kind of saying that nursery staff are not actually helping with toilet training. Would that having consistency within the nursery network, would that be helpful? We're also aware that we have different nurseries, have different policies. So it might be a bit of a postcode lottery as to where you are, and that could be really challenging. You're teasing out here. I'll wait for another couple of minutes, see if any responses. That's pretty unanimous response. Perfect. Thank you. Very interesting. And then final question. So this is about best practice guidance. So from healthcare professionals in particular, in terms of having clarity on what the recommended age is and when you're supposed to kind of be doing certain things in alignment with kind of development and the needs of your child. Obviously, we have differences. And again, some countries might have different policy nuances, and we've already started analyzing the data and the results across the different countries, but obviously we can't run through 74 countries in a webinar. So that data will come through as well. It's very interesting. Okay, and the person who picked, I already have clear guidance in my area and country. Would you mind posting in the chat which area or country you're based in? That would be really helpful. I think this is it. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think there are some really interesting things coming out of that, and I'll leave it to Mark to round up, and then we can open up for Q&A for the last 15 minutes.
So just coming back to these slides. So next steps. So we talked a bit in this question and answer session about how much data we need to have proper recommendations that have got good statistical significance and really kind of reach out to all the different kind of types of parents and carers and kids that are out there who let's face it, there is a big heterogeneity of people's ability to kind of work and not work, and balancing different priorities and their level of kind of income, and so we really do need more data. We've made a sort of target figure of 10,000 because I think that would really kind of get us into that space, and we're currently at about 3,000. We've been going for 12 weeks. We've got a year for this project, so in a way you might say we're doing well, but we are plateauing. So we had a big steep uptake, and we haven't really seen that in the last few weeks. A lot of new users, so it'd be really helpful if you could spread the word if you think that we're doing good work and you recommend us. also, if you have opportunities for us to get involved in your kind of engagements with your communities, we'd be really happy to take part. We also we think benchmarking against other countries, particularly other countries which might have very much lower toilet training ages, and they're doing something completely different, and learning from that is really important. And there's definitely anecdotal evidence that different countries like Spain, Austria have completely different policy approaches to this, and maybe that is resulting in much lower toilet training ages. And it would be really good to get engagement from those countries, as well as from other countries which, you know, also anecdotally, like in the rest of the world, who are maybe lower income countries in Africa and Asia, South America, who culturally have a totally different approach to toilet training and get much lower toilet training ages. We really are really ambitious to kind of capture that. We think that would really enrich the conversation that we need to have in the UK and in other wealthy countries that are suffering from this big onslaught of late toilet training, the effect on effect on schools, the effect on parents, the kids, health, and the environment. We're going to gather a round table to present some of our initial work that we've just shown you to put people in the policy space and people who understand the policy space and can feed into it on the 9th of July, and we'll report back to you after that about some of the outcomes. And then we are presenting our project to Parliament in Evidence Week in November. Well, it's scheduled to be November, it might change. And so we're going to have a real chance to, by that point, we really hope to have both, really good handle on the kind of policy input that we can offer to parliamentarians, and there's a big appetite for that. So that's another reason I hope that you will see this project as useful, and hopefully gain your support and your commitment to continuing to work with us. So thank you very much, really, for coming to this webinar and for engaging in the project and for being one of our citizen scientists if you're doing that, because we really, I think it's a really important thing, and it's the only way we can get good data if people like you take the time to kind of engage with this process, and we're really grateful. So thank you. Thanks to the whole team for kind of doing your great work. It's a big team effort, and and we'll get back to you again with another opportunity to tune into our results at a new webinar later in the year.